Hi, everyone. Good morning. My name's Amanda, and I'm the Community Outreach Coordinator here at the Missouri Poison Center. And today we're going to take a little dive into Halloween as it's only a few days away. We want to talk about some of the potential poisons that might be lurking nearby for you and your family. So, first, we're going to talk about really one of the most common Halloween poisons that we encounter, which are the glow sticks. In terms of their risk, they're pretty minimal in terms of any symptoms, but they can cause a lot of irritation. And so these glow sticks are certainly fun and bright, but we always say don't let kids take that bite. They're a very colorful way to keep children visible on Halloween. And these soft, flexible plastic tubes often break open when children have them around their neck or chewing on it or holding it in their hand, or even when you crack it open. Sometimes that is a time where we see an exposure where that glow stick liquid kind of comes out, and often it's right by your face, so that often can go in your eyes. So, very irritating to the mouth and stomach, but not super toxic in terms of any symptoms. But we definitely receive a lot of calls on Halloween night for these glow sticks. And if one of these breaks, don't panic. Just follow these steps. We encourage you to take that glow stick away, wash off their hands and face really well, wipe out their mouth, and then give them something to drink because that liquid inside, while it looks super, scary and potentially glowing, and you're wondering what it's doing to their insides, it's really just, if anything, going to cause a bad taste to their mouth, maybe an episode of vomiting, but nothing super serious. We always encourage you to call the poison helpline just to get additional information, especially if we have an eye exposure to one of these products, because we really do need to make sure their eyes are rinsed properly. I will share a story about my own kids. Glow sticks are something we have had in our home as well. And I do remember back when my oldest was probably 6 or 7 years old that he either popped or bit into a glow stick in the living room. And I turned the corner, and all I could see was this glowing face with the glow stick liquid kind of dripping from his chin. And for a minute there, as a mom, you kind of panic and you are unsure of what to do, but my training did kick in and I was able to kind of get them cleaned up. But these are not benign, even to Poison Center nurses and staff. So definitely something we'll hear about this Halloween. The next type of potential poison are face paint and face makeup. So it's great for unobstructed sight, better than a full coverage mask in the dark sometimes. And many of these kits are considered non-toxic, but it's best to look for the additional phrase safety tested. And I actually have a example here. Here's a little, oops, let's see, there we go. A little package here, and up at the top, it does say safety tested. All right. And one additional thing we want to talk about is sort of these are can be very sensitive, children's skin and faces can be very sensitive. And so sometimes we get allergic reactions or skin irritation from these types of products. So it's really best to test out the face paint and cosmetics before Halloween night. So I would encourage you to do what we call a skin patch test. And that is to apply a little bit of that makeup in this area on your inner arm. It's real thin skin, and that's kind of a tucked away area that you can test. So just apply a little bit of that face paint or makeup there. And if the product burns or causes any irritation, you want to wash it off well wash it off well with soap and water for several minutes. And if no reaction occurs after 30 to 60 minutes, you can potentially use that product on their face according to the package directions. So it's just sort of a test before the big night to make sure that that sensitive skin here is not affected, which could affect the skin on the face. And then, keep in mind reactions can change throughout the year, so you may need to reevaluate this. And we want to make sure that any makeup that you don't use or that you are intending to use is not expired. And then to make sure you remove it before bedtime and not let it sit on the skin all night, as that can cause a lot of irritation. All right, moving on. Our next poison I don't have an example of, but it is dry ice. And there's nothing spookier than that bubbling cauldron or hazy fog made from some dry ice. But it's important to remember that dry ice is exceedingly cold. It's up to a negative 110 degrees Celsius. So exceedingly cold, and we can see a lot of chilling concerns or chilling consequences and even frostbite injuries. So it's important to take these sort of tips when you do use or have children around dry ice. Of course, it should only be used with adult supervision, and you never want to handle that dry ice with your bare hands. It's best to use metal tongs or even an oven mitt to kind of prevent any irritation. You always want to use it in a well ventilated area. And that includes when you're transporting it in a car. You know, that tight and confined, closed windowed car is not a great place to transport. So make sure you do have some ventilation and that lid is not on very tightly because that loose lid helps prevent that. Gas from building up, that carbon dioxide gas, that buildup can occur if it's too tightly sealed or in too tight of an area. And never use it in place of ice cubes or in punch that may be consumed because it can come in contact with the mouth and, of course, the skin. And we don't encourage any disposal in a sink or a toilet because you can actually have damage to the structures itself because of the extreme temperature. So really know what you're doing if you're going to use this dry ice in your home or for your next party, and make sure it's well supervised for the children. All right. Next one we're going to talk about are our flashlights and batteries. And you might be thinking, well, what's that have to do with Halloween? But it definitely does because it's important for your children to be visible at night and to make sure they carry that flashlight. And we encourage that, of course, but we want to make sure that we're aware that many of our flashlights, especially the small little handheld ones, now have disc batteries or coin batteries, and they can pack a really strong charge. Almost 3,500 battery cases are reported to U.S. poison control centers each year, and children under 4 are at greatest risk for this. And so there are three main causes of injury if somebody does swallow a button or disc battery. The first is if it gets lodged into the esophagus, which is your food pipe, or choked on, it can enter the airway and cause a blockage. And that is obviously a very extensive emergency and can cause a lot of pressure on those tissues. That pressure then can result in a burn because it actually forms an electrical current in that narrow, tight food area. And that can happen in as little as 2 hours and can be exceedingly life threatening. And then sometimes we do see these batteries, if they're bitten on or if they're punctured as they are swallowed, the acid inside can leak onto the tissue or into the stomach and cause additional risk of burn. So definitely something that we want to be aware of. And if you are wondering if a potential exposure has occurred, we want to know some of the symptoms to watch out for. The first and foremost is any choking. Obviously, that is an emergent issue, but also the symptoms of sore throat or trouble swallowing or refusing to take liquids, whereas they can't get something swallowed, they're exceedingly coughing or trying to gag. They have a hoarse or a strained voice. Of course, any cough or trouble breathing, any chest pressure or tightness often is involved, drooling or vomiting. And then we also want to be aware that a lot of these small, tiny batteries can end up in other places like your ear and your nose. And so some children do put things in all sorts of places. So we want to watch those areas potentially for any drainage, abrasions, or sores, certainly any hearing issues or hearing loss. So what we want to do is to kind of just make sure we don't have an exposure to begin with. We want to check your home for any loose or spare button or disc batteries, and it usually includes small things like key fobs, small flashlights, and toys, greeting cards, all sorts of things that you wouldn't expect. And make sure they're secured shut. A lot of newer devices now, you have to use a tiny little screwdriver to open that compartment, and that's a safety feature for children not to get into them. And of course, keep them locked up away. And when you buy new batteries. Many of the packages now, you have to actually open with scissors. They're really difficult to open, and that's another safety feature, and something to think about when you purchase your next pack. And so certainly we want to watch those flashlights. You know, the bigger flashlights like this one have the C and D batteries, of course, would be very hard to swallow, but so a little easier, a little safer for small children. The little tiny flashlights often have either a AAA, potentially a little disc battery. And again, those do look a lot like, let's see, if I can get the camera. So that's an example of one there. There are different sizes, some up to the size of a nickel or a quarter as well, which would obviously cause a concern with the choking hazard. All right, moving away from that, I want to next talk about briefly some of the treats and toys. You know, of course, this is all about the candy, and almost 600 million pounds of candy are sold on Halloween. So this is something we'll see from our experience. And you can avoid that sugar meltdown by bringing some pre-inspected pieces of candy from home. You know, we always encourage to check things over to make sure that they're not punctured or loosely wrapped. And then to avoid that sugar meltdown, just bring a few pieces of already checked candy so you can kind of quickly give that to the children as opposed to waiting for you to go through the candy. And of course, choking hazards are there. One thing people don't often think about, especially now that we're doing a lot more small toys and treats and candy instead of candy, you know, for whether it's an allergy issue or it's an issue related to just not wanting to have a lot of sweets in the house. Mixing them in with actual candy is an issue, okay? So I'm going to pull out some of the things. Of course, we've got our candies and our suckers here, but there are things like little sticky glow eyeballs. You know, this is packaged almost like a gumdrop. It's in the bin of candy, and so it could easily be mistaken as a food item and eaten in that manner. Also think about our little eraser things and little tiny little toys. Only are best for older children, and make sure they're not included in their actual Halloween candy. Something you don't often think about until you see that kind of side by side. So look through it, make sure those get separated before the kids dig into them later in the evening. All right. Moving on, we wouldn't want to leave our furry friends out on Halloween, and we know that animals react differently to things than humans, and we are a human poison center, but we do get calls from time to time about our pets. And for those, we definitely want to make sure that they're not exposed to our Halloween goodies, especially anything containing chocolate, caffeine, or coffee. And those have some products in it that can cause vomiting and diarrhea, excessive thirst and urination, even seizures in pets. So that Halloween candy is a concern. Think about chocolate. You know, you'll always have heard chocolate isn't good for dogs, and that is true. So the darker the chocolate, the more concerning the potential poison risk is. And so it's definitely something we would encourage you, if there was an exposure, to check in with your vet or animal poison center number. And then the other thing we think about with pets is xylitol, and that's a sweetener that's used in many products, including chewing gum and candies that are kind of sugar-free, even toothpaste that has a reduced sugar load. And that can cause insulin release, which can cause liver failure in certain pets. So we want to definitely keep those home type of things, those candies and household products containing these things out of reach, and grab and mouth grabbing from our pets. The Animal Poison Center, the ASPCA, has a animal poison center. I'll include it in the links after this talk, as well as there's a pet poison helpline. Both are available. I will say that we do receive calls from time to time, and we're certainly able to get you to the right place, as well as give you some basic information as we can about your pets. All right. Now, closing things up, I always encourage people to make sure that they save the poison helpline in their phone. Nothing is scarier than kind of panicking in that moment where your child gets into something that they shouldn't and you don't know the phone number. So, we always encourage people, especially parents, anybody really, to save that number ahead of time. It's 1 800 222 1222. And go ahead and save that in your phone right now, 1 800 222 1222. If you'd like any material, magnets, or brochures, stickers, feel free to go to our website, MissouriPoisonCenter.org. You can receive those free of cost for your home, for your business, for your scout troop or school group. You can get those right off our website on the Order Now section, but encourage you to save that phone number just in case. We do get lots of calls on Halloween night, and we don't want a poisoning to spoil your fun. So if you have that number, you get free and fast, confidential assistance from a nurse or a pharmacist within just a few minutes. It won't ruin your night. We hope to get you back out trick-or-treating and enjoying your evening. And feel free to call. We're open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, even Halloween. So hopefully you've learned some tips to keep you and your family poison safe. But if you need us, we're there for you anytime. All right. You guys have a great rest of the week and a wonderful, spooky Halloween.